There's something you need to understand before it's too late. Just a year ago, if you told anyone that Solana would consistently process 50 times more daily transactions than Ethereum, most people would have said, yeah, maybe someday. And if you'd said Solana would be generating more fee revenue than the OG smart contract platform, in fact leading volume and revenue across all L1s, people would have laughed you out the room. But here we are in November 2025, and the first wave of Solana ETFs are finally being approved despite the ongoing government shutdown. Now, Solana isn't just catching up to Ethereum anymore, it's literally challenging the throne. So do me a favor, hit the like and subscribe buttons, turn your notifications on, and let's figure out whether or not we are witnessing the wildest flippening in crypto history. Let's start with the numbers that matter the most, because we're talking about 100 million daily transactions on Solana versus Ethereum's 1 to 2 million daily. Now, despite the huge lead that Ethereum has in total TVL, we know that Solana DEXs handle 5 times more volume than Ethereum's. And remember how in 2024 we saw a massive shift in institutional demand trickling down from Bitcoin to Ethereum? Well, we're now seeing astronomical amounts of SOL being accumulated by massive corporate treasuries like DeFi DevCorp, which of course rang the Nasdaq closing bell recently, and Forward Industries, which raised $1.65 billion to buy SOL and deploy it across Solana DeFi. We'll hear more on that in just a second, but here's Forward Industries chairman Kyle Samani on the sheer ambition backing this vehicle.
We have aspirations for this thing to become a $50 billion plus publicly traded company over the next, 5 to 10 years.
So all things considered, this recent rally from $170 to $200 wasn't just another altcoin pump based on some temporary news or a fancy update in a 7-year-long roadmap. It's actually the result of a fundamental shift in how the entire industry operates and what the users are really demanding. Now, it is worth noting that what Solana is experiencing is nothing new, because Ethereum got exactly this level of attention in past cycles with the ICO boom of 2017 and 2018, and later with DeFi Summer in 2020. Both of these spikes in attention led to huge sways of capital pouring in, and we saw Ethereum's DeFi TVL quadruple in no time. This looks eerily similar to Solana's explosive retail adoption in 2024, which was also the first time we saw SOL flip ETH per mindshare. Now we have a new wave of digital asset treasuries, or DATs, most recently ETFs in 2025. We've seen TVL, chain revenues, active addresses, and transactions all rising rapidly. So here's the obvious question that we need to ask. Despite Ethereum's massive head start, can Solana actually flip Ethereum and become the #2 crypto asset, as some experts have long predicted? Yes, Solana does offer near-instant, low-fee transactions, with new apps regularly being built and deployed. But what we're talking about here is Solana becoming the better choice for developers to build on, for institutions to use, and for retail to adopt. Are all three of these even possible in conjunction? Well, it's not going to happen overnight. So let's dive deeper into the question and figure out if we can answer it a bit more confidently. Let's start with the most recent mega update and work backwards, because the Bitwise SOL ETF getting approved despite the government shutdown took the entire industry by surprise. Even Polymarket, which has got so many major crypto events right, had predicted that the approvals would most likely come sometime in mid to late November. But despite the surprise launches, we saw nearly $16 million in trading volume within the first 30 minutes. But even more impressive was that day one trading volumes were higher than all ETFs launched in 2025. Here's leading Bloomberg analyst James Seyfarth speaking to SolanaFloor.
The fact that you have staking yield, decentralized NASDAQ, all these narratives could help. So really it just comes down to, is it going to be efficient? Are the costs going to be low? Am I going to get a lot of the yield to myself if I'm going to put in an ETF? I think that's what a lot of people who are looking at the space are going to be looking at. But yeah, I'm pretty confident you're going to see many millions of dollars flow into these ETFs.
Now, on the retail adoption question, there is no doubt that Solana already leads. Transactions, daily active users, and network revenue all tell the same story. And people might point to the declining transaction count, which peaked in January 2025 when the Solana ecosystem was exploding around the Trump meme coin launch, when we had full-on meme coin mania. But that makes sense. More people were actively taking part in short-term trading activity. And still, even after that cooling off period, there is a clear difference between Solana and Ethereum, which we can see in overall DEX volumes. If we look at what's happening currently, according to DeFi Llama, Ethereum sometimes flips back to take the lead. But the first 8 months of 2025, Solana consistently dominated Ethereum's DEX volumes. And zooming out reveals an interesting picture too. We see that weekly Ethereum DEX volumes peak at around $40 billion over the last 5 years, while Solana's weekly DEX volumes reach as far as $100 billion in a much shorter period. So a newer player coming in and pushing up to this level in a shorter period of time is very impressive. It's the same thing when you consider developer adoption. Solana took the crown from Ethereum for the first time in 2024 when it became the #1 chain for new devs. Now, Ethereum is still leading the way overall, But when we look at the level of growth over the last 2 years, we see Solana is experiencing far more growth than Ethereum. But perhaps even more impressive is the sheer volume of SOL purchases by dApps in recent months. Solana dApps extended their record run to 20 consecutive weeks as year-to-date inflows have reached $2.8 billion. And you can clearly see here that Forward Industries made a huge splash because they now account for almost half the entire Solana dApp scene. Here's Galaxy's Michael Marcantonio on how Forward's $1.65 billion Solana stake generates over $100 million in annual cash flow, which for many traditional investors makes Solana dApps look like the next evolution in on-chain finance.
So Ford bought Solana, and that $1.65 billion of SOL that Ford was able to purchase is staked right now. That SOL will generate north of $100 million of free cash flow every single year, just simply by virtue of being staked. Now, why is this an improvement on the existing dApp model? Because if you've got free cash flows, you don't have to re-enter the capital markets to pay back existing convertible notes should you issue them. Now, to be clear, no Solana dApps, and as far as I believe, no Ethereum dApp have issued convertible notes yet. But that's obviously the game plan, right? Like, presumably, eventually, BMNR and ETH dApps, as well as Forward Industries and Solana dApps, will get big enough where they can tap the convertible debt markets.
But it's not just retail adoption, it's not just dApps and ETFs, and it's certainly not just transaction volume, because Solana is becoming the home of tokenized stock trading as well. Tokenized stock volume on Solana now represents 90% of all trading volume across all chains. Here's Truflation founder Stefan Rust explaining that change to SolanaFloor.
I think the transaction volume is going to be on platforms like Solana. Why? It's just where buildings happen, and as more and more finance moves on-chain, they're not going to go and build on Bitcoin. And Solana right now is proving where all the action is, and more real-world assets are being tokenized on the Solana chain as well, right?
Remora markets hit $13 million of trading volume within the first 2 months of launching. Solana traders clearly have an appetite for keeping their funds on-chain, and instead of taking profits off-chain, putting them in a brokerage account like Robinhood, they're directly buying stocks like Tesla, Apple, Circle, and Nvidia on-chain through their Solana wallets. Now, before we get too carried away with the numbers, it is critical to remember the importance of revenue for any of these innovations to function long-term. So let's talk about network and app revenues, because this is where Solana dominance really shows. In Q1, Solana dApps generated over $1.2 billion in revenue, leading all L1s. Fast forward to today, G2, Radium, Jupiter, Meteora, and PumpFun have now generated over $1 billion in revenues. The top 3 Solana DeFi protocols are absolutely crushing it. Now yes, Solana's meme season last year made a big splash, and token launchpads like PumpFun made it insanely easy to launch tokens. At one point, we saw over 60,000 tokens launched in a single day. But look at this data from Artemis, which shows daily active addresses declining in parallel with PumpFun. The figures are down 60% from December 2024 all-time highs. Yes, most of that was noise, it was short-term speculation, a bunch of low-effort memes, and some of them were just rugs. But that chaotic energy did bring millions of brand new users on-chain, which is what we saw around the Trump meme coin launch. And that energy is shifting to real, revenue-generating protocols that are building sustainable ecosystems, like the Seeker. The Solana Seeker phone is making waves with the recent airdrop tracker going live, and this thing only launched on August 5th with over 150,000 pre-orders. I've actually got one myself, and I've been playing around with it ever since. The SKR token recently got announced, and I've been farming points daily for the upcoming airdrop, so make sure you are subscribed for the next video covering that. Plus, you can go and check out our Seeker video to decide if you fancy one of these. But here's why the Seeker matters for today's discussion. Both the device and the SKR token flywheel are far beyond your average crypto consumer app trying to onboard billions of disinterested Web3 folks through failed experiments like account abstraction. Instead, it represents a completely different approach than what Ethereum is doing. While Ethereum focuses on institutional adoption and DeFi protocols, Solana is betting that the real flip happens when crypto becomes as easy to use as any other mobile app, and it can be used safely, on the go, using the device that billions of people already have in their pockets. And based on the pre-order numbers, a lot of people seem interested in that vision. But more importantly, Solana is preparing for one of its biggest changes so far. It's called Firedancer, which is a validator client upgrade. Now, this could unlock speeds of up to 1 million transactions per second. That's enough to handle global payment volume and realize the original vision of a NASDAQ on-chain. There's also something called 00, a dedicated high-performance network to replace the regular internet. Now, it's important to note here that 00 is literally rebuilding the global internet infrastructure, and it's doing so specifically for blockchains. This thing is growing fast. because the total connected value of 00 is now $28 billion, meaning over a third of Solana's stake is operating on 00. But beyond Fire Dancer and beyond 00, key upgrades like Alpenglow are also reducing transaction finality to just 150 milliseconds, which is almost a 10x improvement. Going back to that initial question, can Solana actually flip Ethereum? Well, it is possible. Yes, Solana has seen plenty of progress in the crypto space. It's become a massive ecosystem with one of the largest user bases that only keeps growing day to day. And in reality, while there will be many signs of Solana overtaking Ethereum on plenty of levels as we've discussed today, it may not completely replace it. Instead, there's likely to be a coexistence of these two ecosystems. So yes, it is possible for Solana to surpass Ethereum on many metrics, but it may take some time, potentially another bear cycle and another bull cycle. It all comes down to progress and how widely Solana's tech will be adopted. Before we wrap up, as Magellan reminds us, Western Union did not roll their own chain. Neither did PayPal, neither did Fiserv, neither did WorldPay. Instead, finance giants are choosing Solana. ETFs are just the beginning. But more importantly, what do you think? Is this the beginning of a historic takeover by Solana, or will Ethereum hold its crown? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and if this analysis was helpful at all, then smash that like button and subscribe for more deep dives from SolanaFloor. As a final reminder, none of the information in this video or on SolanaFloor is investment advice or financial advice. It is solely for informational and educational purposes. Thank you for joining SolanaFloor, and I'll see you next time for more of the very latest.